If you care about serious history and hard-earned survival knowledge, this is where I ask you to subscribe to this channel and share it with people who value substance over shortcuts. What we're covering today isn't trivia or spectacle. It's lived experience under extreme conditions, and it deserves careful attention. Now stay with me, because for the next minute, I want to set the context properly before we get into the mechanics of survival. When prisoners of war were marched into camps during World War II, starvation was not an accident. It was a system. Across Europe and the Pacific, POWs quickly learned that survival depended on understanding food as a strategy, not a comfort. Official rations were calculated to maintain life just barely, sometimes not even that. The difference between collapse and endurance often came down to small decisions. Media group, crust of bread being saved in a pocket, POW trading buttons or small items, hand-picking wild edible plant near barracks, close-up of watery soup being stirred in a tin cup of stock, distribute equally, saving a crust, trading a button, recognizing a weed growing near a latrine, or knowing how to stretch watery soup into something that could keep you standing another week. This episode is about how POWs actually did that, what they ate, how they adapted their bodies and minds, and why their lessons still matter to anyone studying survival under deprivation today. Why was starvation built into the POW system rather than being an accident of war? In many camps run by the German military and the Imperial Japanese Army, food allocation reflected ideology as much as logistics. Western Allied POWs in German camps often received calories that hovered around survival minimums, while Soviet prisoners were deliberately starved in vast numbers. In the Pacific, Japanese doctrine viewed surrender as dishonorable, and that belief translated directly into neglect. Understanding this matters because it explains why POWs could not rely on the system improving. They adapted because they had no alternative. For a modern survivalist, this reinforces a core principle. When the system fails or is hostile, self-reliance becomes non-negotiable. What official rations actually looked like and why they were never enough. A typical daily ration in a German stalag might include a slice of black bread bulked out with sawdust or potato filler, a thin cabbage or turnip soup, and occasional margarine or sausage scraps. In camps like Stalag Luft III, airmen calculated that rations provided fewer than 1,500 calories per day, sometimes far less. In the Pacific, rice rations were often mouldy, infested, or drastically reduced, with little protein to prevent muscle wasting. POWs learned quickly that hunger was constant and cumulative. The practical takeaway here is the importance of calorie density. Even today, in a scarcity situation, foods that deliver fat and carbohydrates efficiently matter more than volume. When Red Cross parcels arrived, they changed the survival math entirely. Tinned meat, powdered milk, chocolate, sugar, and biscuits provided not just calories, but morale. POWs broke these parcels down strategically, saving fats and sugars for the hardest days and trading excess items for other necessities. Cigarettes became a camp currency, exchanged for extra bread or favours. From a practical standpoint, this demonstrates the value of divisible, shelf-stable goods in any survival economy. Items that can be rationed, traded and stored safely are as valuable as food itself. Foraging was risky, often punished, but it saved lives. POWs learned to identify edible weeds like dandelion leaves, nettles and sorrel growing near fences or drainage ditches. In some European camps, prisoners caught rats, birds and even insects, roasting them discreetly or adding them to soup for protein. In Southeast Asia, POWs recognized jungle plants, bananas, papaya leaves and wild yams, sometimes taught by local civilians or fellow prisoners with agricultural backgrounds. The lesson here is botanical literacy. Knowing what grows locally and how to prepare it safely is a survival skill that no supply chain can replace. Chronic malnutrition forced POWs to change how they moved and worked. They minimized unnecessary motion, sat or lay down whenever possible, and synchronized effort with food intake. Some prisoners deliberately saved food to eat just before forced labor to prevent collapse. This wasn't laziness, it was energy economics. For modern readers, this underscores the importance of pacing and metabolic awareness. In a calorie deficit scenario, efficiency becomes survival. Even scraps could be improved with technique. POWs crushed bones to extract marrow, fermented vegetables when possible, and boiled foraged plants repeatedly to remove toxins. Rice water was saved and reused. Bread crusts were soaked to make them digestible. These methods improved calorie absorption and reduced illness. Applied today, this shows that food preparation matters as much as food availability. Knowing how to extract maximum value from minimal resources is a transferable skill. The real lesson isn't just what POWs ate, but how they thought. They planned weeks ahead with almost nothing. They shared knowledge quietly. They observed patterns in guards, seasons and supply deliveries. Survival was intellectual as much as physical. For historians, these details deepen our understanding of daily life under captivity. For survivalists, they reinforce that preparation begins with knowledge, not gear. POW survival stories remind us that endurance is built from small, disciplined choices repeated under pressure. These men survived not because conditions improved, but because they adapted faster than starvation could break them. That's the legacy worth studying. If this deep dive added something meaningful to your understanding of history and survival, subscribe to the channel, share this with someone who takes these subjects seriously, and keep this conversation alive. This is how we preserve knowledge that was paid for at an extraordinary human cost.